No trade at the deadline for the Houston Texans. Was that the right or wrong move, or is the writing on the wall and it spells Casario's out?
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Battle Red Nation, from H-Town to your town. Today's episode and every episode of the Locked On Texans podcast is for Texan fans all around. Thank you to my everydayers from the Himalayas for making Locked On Texans your first listen of the day. And to the newcomers of the show, I am your Texans credential media member and football analyst, John Hickman. You can also find my work over on Forward Times. Today's episode, I'll be diving into a quick Jags preview before crossover Thursday, where I will talk to the OG Tony Wiggins. That's always fun. Also, the latest on the quarterback situation and a little bit of what D'Amico Ryans mentioned about Nico Collins wanting to get him the ball more. Does that take away from the offense, or does Houston need to focus on getting him the ball and giving him more opportunities to make plays down the field? But I open up today's conversation and show with the Houston Texans making no trade at the deadline. Was that the right or wrong move? Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Wild day in the NFL, Tuesday before the trade deadline, and we saw the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Indianapolis Colts, AFC South running mates, in some ways get better. Indy traded for Ahmad Sauce Gardner, 2 first-round picks, and A.D. Mitchell. Not sure how I feel about the haul that they gave up, but they feel like maybe Sauce Gardner is the guy that can hold out on coverage a little bit long enough to give that defensive front an opportunity to get after the quarterback. And then we saw Jacksonville trade for Jacoby Myers to help aid their wide receiver position. Even saw the Tennessee Titans move on from Draymond Jones. He is now in Philly, I believe. No, actually, I think he is in Baltimore, AFC team that the Houston Texans need to try to win more games to at least stay in that running for the wild card spot. But Houston staying put, no moves, no trades, not sellers, not buyers, not anything, just your Houston Texans. Now, a lot of you guys may look at that decision and say, what the hell is going on? Why are we not looking to make our roster better? And then like myself, there's a group of us that feels like the Houston Texans did not need to trade for any players after losing Sunday, but maybe more so selling off of players, moving off of contracts to give themselves a much more opportunistic 2026 offseason. So for one, it feels like, remember after the Detroit Lions game, the rumblings and rumors of this possibly being the last season Bobby Slowick would have been in Houston started to really get louder and louder. How the Houston Texans lost that game. Feels like maybe this is the point now for Houston and general manager Nick Caserio after losing against the Denver Broncos, how they lost, and really more so how they've been losing throughout the season. Maybe the McNairs stepped in and made the decision, hey, we're not going to move off of, we're not going to do anything until we get a new general manager. Maybe that happened. I'm not saying it did, but maybe behind the scenes, the McNairs are looking at how this organization is being ran as it is right now and how they've been losing games and said, you know what, enough's enough, Nick Caserio. We're going to handle everything moving forward until we find ourselves a new general manager. That could be a possibility, but also keep this in mind. Houston, going back to last season, guys, they have manipulated their game day roster with guys that are healthy and guys that become healthy scratches. So you look at some of the players that are currently on the roster, some of those players are used to be inactive 1 week or two and then active a couple of weeks to give themselves flexibility depending on the matchup of who they are playing the week of. That's been Houston's MO. Do we agree with it? Do I agree with it? Not necessarily, because it messes with the functionality of both sides of the ball. It happens more so for the offensive players due to injury and due to wanting to get guys out there, not out there. So that messes with the functionality of game day rosters. But they preach every week we'll see a different version of this team depending on the matchup. So that could be a reason why Houston declined to make a trade or sell on the trade deadline. Excuse me. But no matter how we look at November 4th, what the Houston Texans should have done before the trade deadline should have been done in the spring. Nick Caley was hired in February. And within the 2 to 3 months after that period, Houston goes through the free agency period. Houston goes through the NFL draft. Houston also has time after the draft to assess their roster, look who's out there, who's still free agents, and have the opportunity to bring those guys in. And during that time span, what we were sold on was the coaching over players. It's kind of like plays over players, right? Sometimes the priority should be player over plays, player over coaching situations. Though great teams have perfect balances of both, for the Houston Texans, there were a lot of uncertainty that you need players that are just absolutely playmakers to help bring along a Nick Caley, a Cole Popovich, and any other new coach on the staff. So regardless of what happened on November 4th at the trade deadline, everything that we would have wanted the Houston Texans to do on the 4th, it should have been done March, April, May, June, July, August, September. I think Houston is so far away from getting this, and I'm going to just say the offense to a point where it feels as though it could complement the defense game in and game out because of the negligence from in the spring. And in a lot of ways, I've been wrong. Wrong on Andrews. Wrong on that, right? Wrong on buying into the approach, even though I knew it was ignorant at the time, buying into the approach of the coaches will get this thing right. Granted, Nick Caley was never my number one pick. Once the decision was made, I bought in. So I think a lot of us, we would have been setting ourselves up for failure. If Houston would have made the trade for Breece Hall, the Jets were asking for a third-round pick. By the way, they also moved off Quentin Williams. They are a smart team. What they did was assess the situation and said, you know what? We're not going to do anything this year. We're not going to do anything next year. Let's get off some of these contracts. That should have been the Houston Texans approach. And if you are a believer in being a seller on the trade deadline, I'm okay with it. Again, maybe the McNairs stepped in and said, we're just going to wait for when we get somebody in here that will be with us next year. But what should have happened on the 4th should have happened a long time ago. And what you don't want to happen, which would be even worse, is trading future assets for a player, and this team finishes 7-10, misses the playoffs. Franchise is also known to have issues with retaining players once they get to Houston. So I thought it was the right move to not trade for anybody. I think you can debate whether or not the Houston Texans should have traded players away, but ultimately Houston is in a place where they are stuck and they have to sleep in the bed that they made. Now, a bed that they made was extending Davis Mills, who is preparing to be the starting quarterback Sunday versus the Jacksonville Jaguars at home at the NRG Stadium. So when we get back, just the latest on the quarterback situation and also the conversation on, okay, do we feel like getting Nico Collins the ball more is going to get this offense to a place where they are creating and establishing rhythm? The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making the final and late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Welcome back, Texan fans. Listen, before we talk about the latest on the quarterback situation, I have been somewhat of the president of the Henry T Club twice this season on either a 3rd and long or 4th and long. Henry T has cost the Houston Texans the game by not being either in his spot. You look at the 25-yard run that Bo Nix picked up at the end of the game against Houston on Sunday that essentially kind of won them the game, or the 4th and 10 missed tackle to where he plays it terribly. And then also go back to Sunday's matchup to where R.J. Harvey runs a wheel route and Henry is just, his feet and eye discipline are god-awful. Since Houston didn't trade Christian Harris, I think that they got to give him a shot. They also just recently extended Jake Hansen, maybe, giving him some more opportunities out there. But against the run, Henry T shows his value. And I think in certain areas he's gotten better this year, but he has cost Houston 2 games this year. And also, I mean, we can look at the offense and their inability to score points, and I get it. Well, this is a defensive team led by a defensive coach who hangs their hat on their defense and being able to be the best defense in the NFL. Henry T has to be better. Now, D'Amico Ryans recently talked about Davis Mills preparing to be the starter against the Jacksonville Jaguars. He said not many times that a guy has had a concussion on a Sunday and played the following Sunday will prepare and press forward as if Davis is the starter, which, I mean, honestly, the way CJ Stroud was on the ground for a little minute and the hand reaction, the body stiffness from that hit, which I think a lot of that was caused from his head, the back of his head hitting the ground. I would be shocked if we don't see CJ Stroud for the next 2 weeks, honestly. And so Houston is going to find themselves. Now, granted, this Sunday, I think we can officially count them out. And I think if Houston is a smart organization, if they want to start making smart decisions, holding him out is important. But the following week, Houston will need him. Again, D'Amico Ryans talked about, listen, he'll have a better week. He'll look better. He should look better with a full week of practice as the starter. But the quarterback situation for Houston right now is CJ Stroud will be out. There's no timetable. But the following game on Sunday, he'll for sure be out. And then after that, who knows? Davis Mills, who's won games in the NFL before. Davis Mills, who's made throws and some impressive throws at times early in his career, of course, before Stroud got here. What the Houston Texans are asking of him, he's done before. I think it's somewhat unfair to judge Mills on his performance, seeing as though he's playing, again, a top 5 defense in the NFL. He's playing a top 5 defense. He played against that top 5 defense in the NFL in a game where Titus Howard goes down, Ed Ingram goes down, and you have left guards rotating, which, again, that's just madness. But it's going to be tough. It's going to be difficult for Houston to carve out a game plan that's going to aid Davis Mills. And right now, and I'll go back to training camp. Davis Mills had a very good training camp. Davis Mills had some good moments in preseason. But right now for Davis Mills, his only ally, maybe ally is not the word I should use, but the only player that he has real NFL game experience with is Nico Collins. And to that point, DeMeco Ryans talked about getting Nico Collins the ball more, said, hey, listen, Nico is one of our better players. We got to find ways to get our better players involved in the game. On the year, Nico Collins has a little bit over 400 yards, 3 TDs, not nearly the yards per play that we have grown accustomed to seeing from Nico in the last 2 seasons, where those numbers for Nico compared to this year, 12.5, the following 2 seasons, the previous 2 seasons, 15, 16, 8 touchdowns, 7 touchdowns. Nico this year has not been nowhere near the version of Nico Collins that we got in 23 and 24. And I think a lot of that has to do with, number one, Nico Collins does not have a true wide receiver 2 opposite of him. Tank Dell came into the NFL immediately this team's wide receiver 2. Immediately. And it's how he did it. Didn't necessarily do it with a volume of targets, but Tank Dell was dangerous down the field, but also even more dangerous in intermediate spaces for a receiver. And then last season, and again, they didn't play a whole lot together, but Nico Collins being this team's wide receiver 1 had Stephon and also had Tank Dell. So he coming to this season with a lot on his shoulders. This team's the leader in the receiver room. But he's also having to bank on an Xavier Hutchinson, a Jaden Higgins, a Jalen Noel, in combination of a new offensive coordinator. It was okay in 2023 when it was Bobby Slug, because at that point, Nico Collins was not Nico Collins. But then he found himself, and he also had a quarterback to play with. That matters a lot. But now, what Houston is asking of their offense and what Houston is asking of their receivers, that has taken away, and also the limited snaps for guys like Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel. You can't justify, 11 plays for Jalen Noel. But with those guys not being able to get out there as much, it's putting more on Nico Collins to separate against press, beat coverages, beat zone, get open. While the defense knows that we can bracket this guy, we don't necessarily have to worry about a Christian Kirk who may or may not play that game, a Jaden Higgins who's still figuring his way out in the NFL, a Jalen Noel who may or may not be on the field, Xavier Hutchinson who may make a play, may not make a play, but his MO since entering the league has been a guy that won't make plays consistently through 18 weeks of football going into the playoffs. This is what Nico Collins has dealt with, and I think has held him back a little bit. You also look at what Ben McNairs does as a passing game coordinator. Has he aided to any of this? I don't think he has. In some ways, I think DeMeco Ryans is right. They do need to give him the ball more often. But we've seen this offense operate a little bit better when, granted, they won't have CJ Sunday, but when the quarterback is able to play point guard and everybody's getting the rock. Now, that approach, I think, should change Sunday without CJ Stroud. Davis Mills does not have the working relationship in real NFL live games with a Christian Kirk, with a Jaden Higgins, with a Jaden Noel, even with an Xavier Hutchinson. Training camp is great. Preseason is great. Practice is great. But Davis Mills is also learning the same thing that CJ Stroud had to learn. And at the very least, he knows and understands I can get the ball to Nico Collins. I mean, he had a beautiful 23-yard pass to Nico on Sunday. Put it to only where Nico can get the ball. But the fact of the matter is, this isn't a single game issue. This may be a season issue for Nico Collins. Collins has, on the year, 57 targets. That's 27th in the NFL. but 21 in the last 2 games. So if you take away the last 2 games, he's in the 30s. It's not going to cut it, especially considering this team is not across the board talented at every position, to where if I don't get Nico Collins the ball, I have a running back that can make plays consistently like they had with Joe Mixon. Dalton Schultz has been fine, but if I'm not getting the ball to Nico Collins, it's not like Houston has a Tank Dell on the opposite side. No, they don't. And not to say Jalen Noel or Jaden Higgins can't replicate that. I think the biggest issue is for both of those young receivers is they're not getting an opportunity to do that. And again, Jalen Noel, prior to Sunday's game, 140 yards in the last 2 games. Before that, 0 targets on Sunday. Some of these issues you just cannot justify. So we'll see how Houston involves Nico Collins moving forward to get the best out of Davis Mills, who I am presuming will play. And also maybe that can help jumpstart the offense. They're going to need all of their best players to be their best players if they're going to have any shot of beating the Jaguars and any shot of making the playoffs. If not, then we may look back in hindsight and say Houston should have been sellers at the trade deadline. But I also want to do a Jags preview before we close out today's show. We got more Locked On Texans talk on the opposite side. Nobody likes paying rent. Nobody. Can't find me a person that just wakes up on the first, whoo, I am so happy to pay rent. But if you must, you might as well get something for it. That's where BILT comes in. BILT is changing the game by turning your rent payment into real rewards you can actually use. When you pay rent through BILT, you earn flexible points that can be redeemed towards hundreds of hotels and airlines, future rent payment, your next Lyft ride, and more. But BILT isn't just about rent. It's about rewarding you around your neighborhood. BILT has made every day feel like a reward, more rewarding, from your neighborhood to your travel plans. Turn your rent into rewards and start earning points around your neighborhood by going to joinbilt.com/lockedonnfl. That's joinbilt, joinbilt.com/lockedonnfl. Make sure to use that link so they know we sent you. Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. Just a quick preview before tomorrow's crossover show. Trevor Etienne on the year averages 5 yards per carry, 75 yards per game. But against Houston, week 3, 3.5 yards per carry and 56 yards total on the day. This Houston defense, that's just what they do. Consistently, whatever a player or a team does well, for the most part, they take it away, or they make it hard on their player or unit to perform well. Trevor Lawrence on the year did have an interception against Houston, but only one game this season with a 70% or more completion percentage. Against Houston, 50% completion percentage. On the year, the defense has 10 sacks, but they have 11 interceptions, plus 8 turnover differential. They are not a good third down offense. This would have been a perfect get-right game for Houston. Perfect. And just a more look at the offense with Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence in the offense better between 0 and 9 yards past that, especially when you get to pass 20 or more yards. He has a completion percentage of 23.5. Now, the offense, it ain't been all Trevor Lawrence. It has not been all Trevor Lawrence. We talk about a get-right game. This could also be a get-right game for Derek Stingley, who, by the way, only allowed 1 catch. It was the touchdown. It was a 30-yarder, but other than that, Derek Stingley, I think, rebounded from that and played great throughout the rest of the game. Nearly had 2 interceptions on the day. But this offense and the playmakers on the outside, they hadn't been great. 24 drops on the season. I'm not sure what it ranks, but that is extremely high. When you look at defenses. The Jacksonville Jaguars have 2 games this year where they've allowed 7 sacks. So under pressure this season, Trevor Lawrence, 3 interceptions, a 51.2 completion percentage, 21 sacks. And you also look at Trevor Lawrence making some of that worse by holding on to the ball too long. I think his average is a little bit over 3.5 seconds under pressure. If Houston going to win this game, it's going to absolutely be on the defense. Absolutely. Kamar Lassiter has been playing great football. Again, Derek Stingley has been playing some good football. Not sure what the approach will be because we talk about Nico Collins needing help. I think Azeez Al-Shaair needs help at the linebacker spot. The high play that I thought that he brought to the game early in the season from Henry T has declined. Not sure if they feel like EJ Speed is an every down linebacker for them at this point in his career, but they may need to figure something out. And if we see more of Henry T snaps, I still think he's a decent player. But on those obvious passing downs, I think it's time to move off of him a lot more because he's starting to become a real issue for Houston's defense in the middle of the field. But the defense is going to have to win this game, like they've done majority of every game this year, outside of maybe Baltimore. They're going to have to stop ETN from being an impactful player. They're gonna need Danielle Hunter to show up and get after the quarterback and bring him down. And they're gonna need their secondary to play lights out. I loved what I've seen from Kalen Bullock the last couple of games. He needs to continue to build on that, and I think he will. Because it's not like Trevor Lawrence won't give him a shot downfield. He'll do that. 34 attempts downfield. If you look at the throws between 10 or more yards combined with 20 or more yards, 105. With 20 or more yards, I gave you guys the completion percentage. 1 touchdown, 1 interception, 4 turnover-worthy plays. And I can't blame this on the receivers. Only 2 drops, 3.47 seconds to throw. Of the 34 attempts, only 8 first downs, with an NFL passer rating of 55.1, the worst of any of his passing depth graded throws. So, yeah, this is going to be the game the defense has to put this team on their shoulders to get it done. Thank you for watching today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast. Of course, I'm still rooting for the Houston. I want to come on this show Monday and have a victory Monday, but right now, reality is setting in, and I think it's set in for a lot of us. This is a very talented team, but it's not a good team. I do think there's talent across the board offensively. I mean, again, Ariante Ursery continues to ascend as a player. The inconsistencies on getting guys involved in the ball, when 1 week they show out, the next week their coach makes them a no-show. It's one thing if you're a no-show by your own merit, but if you're not getting an opportunity to get those shots up, then who's to blame? So I'll be here every step of the way. Follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12. Like, comment, and subscribe to the Locked On Texans podcast on YouTube. Also, wherever you listen to your podcast. Until next time, ladies and gents, Texan fans across the nation, peace.